Hello, welcome to Nintendo Deep Dive. This is Carl again, and to those who are familiar with this empty desk setup with a blue screen of a television for lighting, well then you'll know that we are doing another game show and tell. And the games that we will be looking at will be for the PS2. And, well, before we actually start looking at some of the games, I never grew up with a PS2. And I only recently acquired one maybe a year ago. I got a slim model with the top loading disc tray, which is very, very nice. But I really haven't actually delved too much into the games that I've acquired for the PS2. So, with that said, I may be moving through these a little faster than previous videos, and that might actually be a good thing. So, jumping right into it, the PS2 launched in, I believe, March of 2000, a full 18 months before the Xbox and the GameCube. But in that time, they really didn't have a lot of great games come out. You had Time Splitters, the first one, which was definitely a really good game, though it's not the best of the three on the system. And other games like Smuggler's Run, maybe GTA 3, which was a big deal. But in terms of what I got, the first game I'm going to show off didn't actually come out until March 2001, a full year after. And that is Onimusha Warlords. This is a game that I believe was created by, I don't know who it was created by. Essentially, it was created by the Resident Evil team. So there is some corollaries between the two, such as isometric viewing angles and, I suppose, undead enemies. Otherwise, though, it's a pretty different setting, set in feudal Japan, and you use a sword and not a gun. And it's supposed to be a pretty good game. I think this actor here, or the character is modeled after some actor in Korean or Japanese television. And that was like a big selling point. I haven't played this game, but I like what I've seen of it. It looks really nice with the pre-rendered graphics or the pre-rendered backgrounds set within that isometric angle, and this was an exclusive for the PS2. So, I haven't played it though. Second game to come out in March of 2001 is the first Zone of the Enders, which is a mech fighting game. I believe, was it developed by Hideo Kojima, or in part developed by him? It may have been. But it's a game where you control mechs, or whatever they're called. They're not Gundams, but... and maybe mech isn't the right term. Either way, they look like a lot of fun, but I don't have that one here at the moment. Okay. So, moving out of March into June, the next game that came out for the PS2 was Twisted Metal Black, which I believe is purportedly the best of the Twisted Metals. And I'm not sure they ever actually made another one for the PS2. I could be wrong. They made one for the PS3, but this was the one that... this was the one to beat, and I don't think they did on the PS3 version. It's a car combat game with, I believe, a single player included. I'm not sure how robust it is, but if you're not doing the single player, you fight your friends in a variety of different vehicles with a variety of different oddball characters with... what's his name? I don't even know. I can't think of it. It'll come to me much later. But yeah, Twisted Metal Black came out early and was the best that that franchise had to offer, or so I'm told. Then, moving from June into September, we have Ico. And Ico is a game that I have not played, but I have played its spiritual successors. That being Shadow of the Colossus and The Last Guardian. This is a game I'm very excited to play, as you are in this beautiful, stark world where you are doing puzzles and exploring this castle in a, well, and that castle, pardon me, is laced with atmosphere. It's quite the game from the looks of it, and you also hold out your hand and have this girl tag along with you in what's a not story heavy so much, but there's sort of an underlying narrative occurring, being told by the gameplay. This is like, I don't want to call it art, but this is sort of like an art sort of game, though still very satisfying to play, I imagine. And after Ico, which came out in September, we move into November, where we get Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. I have watched someone play this from beginning to end, but I have not touched it myself. There's certain things about Metal Gear that are a bit absurd to me, but I do appreciate the level of detail within the gameplay. Oh my, there's even like a comic book, like an instruction manga. It's a really good manual. That's really good stuff. Characteristic about the disc or the case, the disc case, is that you can put a memory card in here, just like with the GameCube. I'm sure this is someone's favorite Metal Gear Solid game, many people's favorite Metal Gear Solid, as is the case with possibly all the Metal Gear Solid games. So we've now hit the release date of the GameCube, November 2001, and you can already see that we got like a few games. The PS2 is a few games ahead of the GameCube. though not too many games ahead. I'm sure there's one or two games that should also be on that stack that aren't. But yeah, in 2001, pretty early on, you get some real hitters. And, well, I've now actually mixed up my times here. This came out in November, and this came out in October. Devil May Cry. Another game by... it's by Capcom, isn't it? I believe it is. There we are. A game by Capcom. Also isometric, like Resident Evil. And I think this game was created by... I could be wrong on this, but I believe this was created by... Who would even be the creator of it? The head of Platinum, or recently the head of Platinum. Hideki, it's not Hideki Kono. It don't matter. Like this, I think he created this game and this franchise, and it was a character action game, which I'm not even sure character action games were a thing until Devil May Cry. And this may have been the first one, or a pioneering game in that franchise that was no doubt probably very early on at this point. And it was an exclusive to the PS2. And that came out... I'm going to drop them. Came out in October. So, after Metal Gear Solid 2, in December, we got Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, which I believe this is a spin-off of a PC franchise. And in this franchise, it's like a top-down sort of Diablo-style game where you're playing in real time, but going through dungeons. And you can pick a few different characters. And it was also available on the GameCube, but this is one of the games that's better on PS2. And I think on Xbox. I think this was on Xbox. So the GameCube version is fine, but the fact that the GameCube is actually missing a button actually compromises this game to a degree. There's like one extra step in the menus that you have to take. So I haven't played that game, but it seems to be decent enough. And then still in December, now we're really picking up with the PS2 now. We got Jack and Daxter. This game, I don't actually know quite what it is. I believe it's a platformer in the style of Banjo-Kazooie, though later additions to this series would kind of change it from that. But anyway, it's a 3D platformer with purportedly a very good atmosphere. It was... Oh no. This is kind of a crazy manual. It was developed by Naughty Dog. And yeah, it's a 3D platformer. I don't think I can open up this entire thing. let's put Pandora back in its box. So you can actually see it right there. Naughty Dog. And I believe there are many people probably still clamoring for that series to come back. And after Jak and Daxter came out in December of 2001, we got another big release, Final Fantasy X. And I don't think I've actually played a Final Fantasy game before, but people really love this game. And I can definitely see the reasons why. It's very beautiful. It's supposed to be very big and epic. Though, I think the game has some famously quite terrible voice acting, or spotty, perhaps. I don't know a single thing about it beyond that, though. The art style is definitely very beautiful, though. So, I'm just kind of driving home here that even though this came out in the year 2000, that head start doesn't really seem to have really helped the PS2 in terms of software. I mean, it certainly helped, don't get me wrong, but you're really starting to see games come out. Like the big games, their launch is coinciding with the launch of the other systems. And those systems had a pretty strong launch lineup to almost counter this very strong quasi or pseudo launch lineup here. But of course, the PS2 though, it had more games than the Xbox and the GameCube, when all is said and done. So going into 2002, we got a game and a series I've never heard of called Maximo. Maximo Ghosts to Glory. Now, apparently, this is a spin-off of Super Ghouls and Ghosts, which is very, very interesting to think about, that there's like spin-offs, more than just one spin-off to Super Ghouls and Ghosts. The other being Gargoyle's Quest with Firebrand, who I am familiar with, but Maximo I am not. I really like the sound of this game. Apparently it is a 3D platformer / action adventure game that is super, super hard, despite the fact that its visuals are cartoony. So, it's structured like a platformer, a 3D platformer, but I think it plays significantly different. Anyway, looks pretty good. I'm looking forward to playing that and being frustrated by it. And that was also an exclusive to the PS2, just like Final Fantasy X, I believe, is an exclusive, and Jak and Daxter and Metal Gear Solid 2 and Ico and Devil May Cry. I believe Devil May Cry was an exclusive, and Twisted Metal and Onimusha. A lot of exclusives. And after Maximo, in May 2002, we got Way of the Samurai. Very, very boring case. I know, it's not even the real case. But this game sounds pretty cool. It is a action game meets an adventure title. It's all about making a bunch of choices. And there's like 10 or so different endings, and you can pick them. And there's also combat, some pretty good looking combat. in the mix. So it's like a 2-hour long game, but you can play it a bunch of different times because it's like a choose your own adventure style game, which is very, very interesting. And after Way of the Samurai, in July, we got Mark of Cree. One thing that really struck me about this game is, first, I can't really figure out its inspiration. It almost looks Samoan or maybe Maori, the character. But you're swinging around what looks like to be a steel sword. And it's an action game where I think you're fighting pirates. And there was a sequel. I don't have the sequel. The animations look really good in the combat. And that's all I really know. I suppose I could read the back. Follow Rao, a heroic warrior, as he embarks on an adventure filled with conflict, discovery, and magic. Accompanied by his loyal friend, a bird named Kuzo, Rao must battle many enemies across lands near and far to uncover the truth about his family's dark secrets. So, there's that. Then, after Mark of Cree, in August of 2002, we got Onimusha 2, Samurai's Destiny. I should read the back of these since I know nothing about them. 10 years after the lone swordsman Samanosuke rose up against an army of demon warriors, Nobunaga's evil campaign continues to wreak havoc across feudal Japan. A young warrior, Jubai, returns home to his remote and once vibrant village. Is that right? Returns home to his remote and once vibrant village in ruins, destroyed by Nobunaga's minions. With vengeance in his heart, Jubai launches upon an epic and magical quest which will reveal his ultimate destiny. Earn the respect of confidants along the way to help Jubai battle demons, monstrous bosses, or overcome ingenious puzzles, and defeat Nobunaga's pillaging hordes. Something about how that's written throws me off. It might just be me. So, I believe in exclusive. You know, and that one actually may have a manual. It's black and white, but there are some nice character drawings, no doubt. And then in September of 2002, we got Kingdom Hearts. This is a marvelous bit of box art. It's almost like platinum in color, something like that. And the moon, why did I not notice the moon was a heart shape? I'm not terribly familiar with Kingdom Hearts. And I don't think I can read that. Explore new and familiar worlds featuring over 100 Disney characters. Beware of the Disney villains and their devious intentions. Team up with Disney heroes to or as you battle evil. Experience stunning graphics and authentic voiceovers. So this is kind of like an action RPG with a fusion of Disney and Final Fantasy characters in a Final Fantasy style, though the Disney characters are still in their original way, the way they're drawn. I'm apprehensive about that game, but I'll give it a try. And kind of grabbing low on the pile here, we got Sly Cooper and the Thievis Raccoonus. I figured it would be Sly Cooper, the Thievis Raccoonus, as I don't know, I thought he was that, but apparently there's another raccoon who thieves. Unless Sly Cooper doesn't thieve. There's a new thief in town. Sly Cooper, the notorious international thief, is out to reclaim what is rightfully his. Prepare to infiltrate the most secure places in the world. And some other stuff right there. This is a game done by... is it Insomniac? Not seeing their name on the case. So this is another exclusive. And there would be a few games like this of this franchise on the PS2. And then I think they kind of all went away on the PS3. Maybe there was one more release. I might say I'm more interested in Sly Cooper than I am in Jak and Daxter. But it's hard to say. So, basically all of those games I've talked about have been exclusives, except for like one or two of them. Or literally just one of them. So the PS2 had a lot of exclusives. This next one is not an exclusive. It came out on the GameCube and presumably the Xbox. And that is Hitman 2, which is maybe the first Hitman console game. And it's supposed to be very, very good. Although I've never played a Hitman game before. And I don't know. It's a stealth game. I don't know what more there is to say about it. I was utterly addicted the moment I started playing Hitman 2, Electronic Gaming Monthly. I believe you can kind of just kill people in a number of different ways in a bunch of very, very big levels. And this was developed or published, I think developed by Eidos, IO Interactive, I think is the developer. I'm bumping the camera, my apologies. So after Hitman, which came out in October, and all those other games, Sly Cooper and Kingdom Hearts came out in September, by the way. In October again, we got another multi-platform. Was on the GameCube, but I have it here. It's just a little cheaper to buy for the PS2, and that is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. Never played a Tony Hawk game. I hear 3 and 4 are very stinking good. And in terms of which console or which version of this game is better, the visuals on the PS2, like close up, are very sharp, but the draw distances are like very aliased, or things in the distance are very aliased. Whereas on the GameCube, the image is actually quite soft up close, not terribly soft, but then the draw distance seems to be greater and less crinkly looking. And I don't know what else to say about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. It has very, very great levels, I hear. And after Tony Hawk came out in November, we got Ratchet and Clank, the first one, which it's funny to think that this game is kind of a later addition to the PS2, even though we're only in 2002. This game is developed by Insomniac, who would later do... What would they later do? Spider-Man? Or is that... I don't know if they did Spider-Man. Maybe that was... I have no idea. It's not Machine Games who does Spider-Man. Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch would do Spider-Man, I think. Or is it Insomniac? I have no idea. It doesn't matter. Insomniac's a big developer for PlayStation. And they did... What did they do? They didn't do Crash Bandicoot. Did they do Spyro? Did they do Spyro the Dragon? It's possible. Silly that I don't even know this. So this is it's not really a platformer. It's more of a third-person character action-adventure game. And it's very witty, and it's got a lot of attitude. A lot of these games, I think, have a bit of attitude. But the first one, well liked, but I think it gets better from there. And after Ratchet and Clank, we get Guilty Gear. I think it's Guilty Gear Double X or Double Cross. And this version I have is not Guilty Gear Double Cross. It's Guilty Gear Double Cross Accent Core, which is a later release of the same game. Done by Axis Games. This game, I think there's like a crazy story to it, but I don't think that really matters. It's a fighting game with beautiful pixel graphics and some gratuitous cleavage as well. Always a good time. I don't know if I can really get that point across with the disc, but all these characters are in very, very high pixel count sprites. Or anyway, it's a fighting game. It's very good, and Guilty Gear's still popular today, maybe even more popular. You could get that particular version on the Wii, but it's not very good, apparently. And one thing the PS2 has in excess is fighting games. So if you liked fighting games, well, the PS2 was your system of choice. That and another genre that we'll get into. After that, well, speaking of that other genre, after that we got Dark Cloud 2, which is another exclusive, as was Guilty Gear. Not that version, but Guilty Gear was an exclusive, I believe. And this is a sequel to a game, an early game on the PS2 that was not technically very good. And I think this game was made by Level 5. So I don't know much about it, actually, though I heard it's very good. Discover a secret binding the past, present, and future. A secret where an innocent inventor, a temporal warrior, and an ageless evil hold the key. Experience an epic action role-playing adventure that relies on your innovation as much as exploration and fighting reflexes. Enhanced. What does that say? Enhanced Georama allows you to recreate worlds with more freedom and flexibility. Tinker with the invention system, allowing you to create hundreds of items, including tools, weapons, and more. Fight your way through an array of unexplored dungeons, including caves, sewers, and forests. Vibrant graphics complemented by movie caliber voiceovers. The graphics are very nice, and yeah, there's like lots of different things going on in this action RPG that looked really good, and this is a great case. Oh, but no manual. Seemed heavy enough to have one. So after Dark Cloud 2, which I should have mentioned this, Guilty Gear came out in February 2003, and Dark Cloud also came out in February 2003. So now we're into 2003. In March of 2003, we got Tenchu Wrath of Heaven. Tenchu, I believe, started on the PlayStation with Tenchu Stealth Assassins or something like that. And this is the third or fourth game, I believe the third one. And I think the best one mechanically. There was another one after this. Maybe that one's called Stealth Assassins, actually. That actually doesn't look as graphically good. And then there's one on the Xbox 360 and one on the Wii, which looks promising. But this seems to be the best one from what I hear. And this is a great bit of box art, too, I might add. So Tenchu is a game where you, well, maybe we can just read it. Move like a shadow, strike like a snake. After amassing an army of ninjas and lords of darkness, the mysterious Tenrei has begun a quest to conquer 16th century Japan. Now your master, Lord Goda, has called upon you, a cunning stealth assassin, to stop Tenrei and his disciples before all is lost. So it's a stealth game where you can clamber on roofs and do silent takedowns, and really, if you're doing muzzle-to-muzzle fighting, you're kind of doing it wrong. So I think that's the second stealth game on the PS2. Well, actually, that's not true. It's the third. We have Metal Gear Solid, maybe Sly Cooper, Hitman 2, at least for 2, and then Tenchu for 3, which I always enjoy a stealth game, and I should play more of them. So, I'm looking here, in March of 2003 as well, we got Zone of the Enders. And this would be Zone of the Enders 2, which I already talked about. Zone of the Enders. And Zone of the Enders 2 is purportedly a marked improvement over the first one. Oh, everything's falling apart on me. This This disc is a little beat up. Anywho, I believe the first game was more open, and this one's more closed. There we go. A very nice Xbox 360 collection of them. And I think that was an exclusive for the PS2 during this generation. So after Zone of the Enders 2, we got a game called Primal, which is a action adventure game similar to Zelda potentially, and it's very creepy and spooky. And let's see here. The battle to save the outside world starts within, as Jen Tate, a modern-day girl, faces the demons of an immortal realm and discovers her own supernatural origin. And then we got some more text down there that's actually quite small. I don't know much about it, but it's supposed to be quite good. So we have gone past the camera, so we're going to push this off to the side and start another stack. Sorry about my chair squeaking. And so Primal came out in March of 2003. And then after that, in August of 2003, which is a pretty big jump, really not much going on in late spring, early summer, we got Splashdown Rides Gone Wild, which I believe is a sequel to Splashdown on the PS2. So this game, it's very similar, or at least conceptually similar to Wave Race, in that you are racing on, I don't know if it's a jet ski so much as apparently it's a Sea-Doo. And this was, I believe, exclusive to the PS2, though maybe it was on the Xbox. It was on the GameCube, even though it's done by THQ. This game's big thing is that you go through these crazy courses that change. It says right here, each lap changes to open new paths and shortcuts. And there's a stunt system too, and really the big feature of this game is that, the tracks are crazier than you would find in Wave Race, and apparently there's 45 tracks and tons of unlockables. So this is supposed to be a very good racing game, or a very good water sport racing game. And after Splashdown, we got Jak 2, which you can kind of see that how would I put it, the aesthetic of the series is sort of changing from 1 to 2. It's a little less happy, and there's a little more grit and attitude, I guess. But I think people really like Jak 2. It's definitely shifting more from a banjo-style game to a more Ratchet and Clank game, maybe. I don't know, 3D action-adventure game rather than a platformer, purportedly. But that's all I know about it. I think you fly around on a bike a lot, which kind of takes it out from being a platformer at that point. And yeah. So I will say that it's remarkable that all you had to do was wait 2 years for, or less than 2 years, I think. This came out in October, so about almost 2 years, and you got a sequel to a pretty big sequel to one of your franchises on the PS2. And nowadays, you seemingly have to wait 5 years for a ground up sequel that isn't incredibly iterative or even reusing assets. So that's another exclusive, by the way. And after Jack 2, we got SOCOM 2, which I don't have SOCOM 1, which is maybe a mistake on my part. But this is a tactical third-person shooter, first-party developed. It kind of went away after the PS2, I think. But looking at it, a very timeless quality of it is that you are doing a lot of stealth and planning and careful decision making in a large space rather than a corridor level with commands given to your other Navy SEAL members. The world's terrorists have targeted America and her allies. I'm not going to read that. You know what this is, the story and the setting of it is. But it's third person, and yeah, it's a first party title, and it's the second one on the system. And continuing this year of sequels, we got Ratchet and Clank Going Commando. This is number 2, but I don't know if it actually says that anywhere. I don't know what the big differences are with this game. I think it's just more polished and better. I have not played a Ratchet and Clank game, but yeah, and in a year's time, they spun out 2 of them, or spun out a sequel rather, not 2 of them, and that one is purportedly better than the first one. And after Ratchet and Clank 2, which came out in November, alongside SOCOM, which came out in November, still in November, we got a game called I Ninja, developed by Namco. This is a multi-plat game. It was also available on the GameCube and presumably the Xbox, done by Namco. And it's a platformer that looks like it has really great level design and really great character movement. The one thing I don't like about it is I think this character is very generic, and he kind of looks like, I don't know, like a, chibi isn't the right word, but he's just very generic, and I don't know. Otherwise, though, the level design, which I've seen, looks really good, and people bring this game up as a hidden gem for this generation. And a big emphasis on platforming, but also combat. And after that, in November of 2003, we got a game called 13, which is another multi-plat, but it is very cheap on the PS2 and not on the GameCube. It was done by Ubisoft, and it has an art style that is essentially like a comic book, where everything's very cartoony. So this game has aged very well. In fact, I believe this game's art style inspired Red Steel 2, though it's definitely not the same. And as you shoot weapons or I don't know, do things. You have these big onomatopoeic phrases pop up like it's a comic book, and yeah, it's a very interesting looking game, essentially timeless. Yeah, it's got a graphic novel presentation with pop-up windows, visual audio, and flashback graphics. Oh, apparently there's a revolutionary online and split-screen multiplayer. Didn't know that. The PS2 had an online, but apparently I think only 100 titles supported it, or 120. And that is 120 titles out of 1,500. So it was definitely very forward thinking of them, but it's not as in play as you might think. I think that was more of an Xbox initiative, though. It wasn't until Halo 2 that you got online, or, well, maybe before Halo 2, but that was the first Halo game to have it. That's 13. I'm very excited to play that. Apparently the remaster is bad and it kind of botches the graphic novel look of it. So after 13, still in 2003, in December, I just have to sort through some of my games. Oh, there we are. In December, we got Max Payne 2, the Fall of Max Payne, a Rockstar game. Oh, I forgot about that. I have not played any Max Payne games. I got Max Payne 2 because I think Max Payne 1 looks kind of ugly, and 2 looks significantly better. I don't know anything about Max Payne, aside from the fact that it is a third-person shooter where you can stylishly slow down time as you do a John Woo-esque dive around cover or across, just, I don't know, just jumping from the side. And that's all I know about it. People really like the franchise, though, and they like the storytelling as well. It was not this was a multi-platform release, though it never came to GameCube. I don't think any Rockstar games ever came to GameCube. So after Max Payne 2, starting in 2004, getting into 2004, we got Maximo Army of Sin. And this would be the last Maximo game to be made. I think it's better than the first one, slightly better graphics, still the same kind of cartoony art style and really hard gameplay. I think all the things you find in it are essentially robotic enemies, like a automaton army or something like that. Also an exclusive for the PS2. So, I mean, just to touch on it, basically, not only did you get exclusive franchises for the PS2 or exclusive one-off games, you got trilogies and duologies, and even quadrilogies in many cases, as you'll find as I continue on. So the exclusives on the PS2, there is many of them. So after Maximo Army of Sin, in April of 2004, we got Hitman Contracts. And I don't know too much about this game. I believe it's kind of a revisit of the Hitman games on PC, 1 and one in, I don't know, one in some other game. And I don't think people love this one, but apparently it's still very much a good game. I don't really have much to say about it other than that, though. Sorry. And then, still in April, we got Onimusha 3 Demon Siege. In this game, I mean, if you recognize this character here, this face, that is, what's his name? Jean. It'll tell me on the back. Jean Renault. Oh, I hit my thing. Jean Renault and Takeshi Kaneshiro. Oh boy, I can't read all that. So this one actually takes place in the present with the with time traveling, and this is apparently the conclusion to the trilogy. Though there would be a fourth Onimusha game that I do not own, as it sounded a bit superfluous, but as I was saying, exclusive to the PS3, and you got 3 of them. And I think that one is actually unique in that it is not isometric. It's a third-person action game, I believe. And after Onimusha 3, we wait all the way till September. I phrased that weird, I know. And we get Sly 2, Band of Thieves. It's interesting that this one also abbreviates its title like Jak 2 did. I don't know why, but that's how they did it. This game, you can kind of see here, it's got very nice, I don't know if you can see it actually, very nice cel-shaded graphics. And yeah, it's a platformer, action, adventure platformer like the first one. And after Sly 2, we got an action RPG that's very prominent today, but in its origin, it was quite obscure on the PS2, and that is Monster Hunter. I was tempted to add a number 2 or a subtitle, but it's just Monster Hunter. And it's online, which is very sensible. It's a big deal for Monster Hunter. This was exclusive by Capcom, who has, as you can see, really supported the PS2. And they even really supported the GameCube to a degree, too. So Capcom's massive in the 6th gen. This is a game that I've played a few of them. But I haven't played this one, but I do know what it is about. And it's all about fighting gigantic monsters with very ridiculous weapons. And then using those monsters' parts to make even better and more ridiculous weapons. And the game, though I haven't played it, I imagine the Rathalos, which you can see here, I imagine all of his animations are intact. And the first time you fight a Rathalos in Monster Hunter 3 or 4, just watching this massive dragon move around in a very realistic and fast way and overwhelming, just the amount of animations on this humongous creature, breathtaking. It's always been my favorite thing about the Monster Hunter series. Not so much the grinding for weapons, but I just like fighting the monsters and seeing what moves they have. And even in Monster Hunter, they don't even have to attack you if they hit you with their body. with any kind of momentum, you'll take damage. So you have to really watch yourself. And as for the combat, I imagine it's quite similar to the games I've played, where it's almost like a Street Fighter game, or Street Fighter elements of Street Fighter elements built into a 3D action RPG. Probably rough around the edges, as Monster Hunter was famously quite opaque, but I know enough that I should make some headway into that game when I get into it. I'm very happy to have it. And after Monster Hunter, we got Katamari Damacy. And this game has a very beautiful cover. Essentially, this game is all about collecting, amassing objects. The rolling, sticking, never stopping, ever swelling clump of stuff that makes a star out of everyone and everything. When the king of all cosmos accidentally destroys all the stars in the sky, he orders you, his pint-sized princeling son, to put the twinkle back in the heavens above. How, you ask? By rolling everything and anything on Earth into clumps, so he can replace what's missing in space. So we essentially just go about a 3D area. In an art style, it looks kind of like this, with a very weird shaped looking character. And you roll items together, and the more you roll, the bigger you get, and the bigger the things that you roll are. And it's just about rolling around with this sort of precarious bit of movement and collecting bigger and bigger things. First it's Legos, I imagine, and then it's peoples, and then it's probably buildings. It's very, I want to say Japanese, but not like Japanese as far as anime or manga goes, but just like it has a different sensibility to it. And I'm very excited to play that. And after Katamari Damacy, which we're in September now, and it's September of 2004, so I don't seem to have a lot of games for the PS2 in September of 2004. But many of those games that I would have are probably just something I own on the GameCube, as the GameCube and the PS2, while the PS2 has more multiplats and more games overall, a lot of the big third-party games that were prominent and notable in this generation were on all three systems, including the GameCube. But if they were on the GameCube, then they were probably definitely on the PS2 as well, barring exclusives. But this was not on the GameCube, and that is Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, which features a very nice cel-shaded art style. I think probably made out of necessity to make the open world more, how would I put it? Just to make the open world setting work. So there wasn't a bunch of flat, unrealistic buildings in a realistic setting. I don't know. I played half an hour of this game, and in that half an hour, I got attacked by gang members, cops, and beat up some people, and stole someone's bike, and fiddled around with with the shooting controls, and that didn't work out, and I died. The game's This is a game, it's a sandbox game where emergent gameplay is kind of the bread and butter of it, and it seems maybe overly emergent. Great box art, though. I haven't played it. I haven't played any Grand Theft Autos. Yeah, but that will be my first one. After Grand Theft Auto, which was in October 2004, we got Killzone, which was a PS2 exclusive and done by one of their teams. Which team, I'm not actually sure. For a shooter, the graphics are really, really good. And I think it's a decent shooter, decent futuristic shooter. I don't know too much about it other than that. I don't know if the series really got going till Killzone 2. Very grungy, very serious, but really nice graphics and some pretty cool weapons. And, you know, another exclusive intellectual property on the PS2. After Killzone, we got Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal, which I believe is the best of the Ratchet and Clank games. And they seem to pop out one of these every year since 2002, which is really crazy. And I do appreciate that. It may seem like a little much, or probably did seem like a little much back in the day, but now it's a good problem to have. Pardon me. Oh, yeah. Excuse me. I think the release button might be slightly broken on that one, so we won't look through the manual. And we have the third Ratchet and Clank, and after the third Ratchet and Clank, still in November, we got Jak 3, which I think this is when people decided that the Jak series was taking itself too seriously, though maybe that's a small minority of haters. I don't know. The epic legacy concludes. And yeah, this is definitely a far cry from what you saw in the first Ratchet and Clank game. Like in terms of aesthetics and atmosphere, I'm assuming anyway. This one's, I mean, you can kind of look at it. It almost looks like it's inspired by Mad Max. Even so, I did not pay a great amount of money for this game. I didn't really pay a great amount of money for any of these games. It's always a good time, yes, it's always a good time to collect PS2 games because they're cheap and you can find a lot of quality titles. So that's Jak 3, the third of that franchise. And speaking of the third of a franchise, in November of 2004, we got Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. And that is a very, very good cover. A Hideo Kojima game. Now, I haven't played this game, but I did watch it be played, and I have to say this is probably the most promising of the Metal Gear Solid games. More so than 2 and more so than 4. I like the setting, some of the boss fights look really good, and that idiosyncratic gameplay. It's not very calming, I apologize. The idiosyncratic gameplay and the attention to detail makes it another super auteur-like Metal Gear Solid game. And as we can see here, we have some of the bosses you fight in the game, the pain, the fury, the sorrow, the fear. I think the end is the most prominent because he's the most liked. I guess therefore the most prominent because he's a super, super old man, but he's a sniper, and the fight with him is super tense, and I don't know, it's good stuff. Hitting the camera, my apologies. I have a very cramped space here. And I'm clumsy. Okay. So, a third Ratchet and Clank, a third Jack game, and a third Metal Gear Solid. Though interestingly, a second Sly 2. Though maybe that was released in. Oh no, that was also released in 2004. So, a year of trilogies. So that's the end of 2004, though. And after, or not after 2004, though technically after 2004, starting 2005 in January, we got Mercenaries, Playground of Destruction, which I had no idea that was a LucasArts game. The Pandemic logo makes sense. This is an open world game where, well, let's look at this. Anything goes in this playground of destruction. You are a lethal mercenary. Your mission is to topple a sinister military regime by any means necessary. If it drives or flies, you can hijack it. If it shoots or explodes, you can use it as a weapon. You are free to go anywhere, destroy anything, and blow the crap out of everything. In this playground of destruction, there are no limits, no barriers, and no mercy. People still occasionally talk about that game. And, well, I don't know. It sounds fun. I'm not a big open world gamer, but something about the PS2 ethos of open world games, well, that seems more interesting to me because they're more like gamey and they're more just like a playground of destruction, I guess, rather than being a map full of stuff. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if that's going to hold up, but we'll see. So after Mercenaries, in February 2005, we got Gran Turismo 4. And Gran Turismo 3 was Gran Turismo 3 Aces. I believe that was like a launch title or a game that came out in 2001. But regardless, the fourth game sounded more appealing. I've never really played a realistic style racing game or one with realistic physics, a simulator, pardon me. But I figured this sounds like the one where I should start. It's supposed to be a very good driving game, if not terribly exciting, I guess, from a audiovisual perspective. But who knows? After Gran Turismo, we got Project Snowblind, which came out February 2005. I don't know a lot about this game either, but it's a first-person shooter exclusive to the PS2, and you get a lot of interesting weapons, and I think it has a cartoony art style, or a slightly stylized one, and, well, it's supposed to be decent, not necessarily incredible. And you can kind of tell I'm not necessarily super excited about it, but if it grabs me, it will grab me. And after Project Snowblind, still in February of 2005, we get Tekken 5. Tekken 4 was not necessarily well loved. I'm sure it had its fans, but Tekken 5 is the quintessential Tekken game on the PS2. Lots of characters. Lots of characters and just good Tekken combat. Really great looking presentation. And yeah, Tekken 5. I haven't really gotten into fighters, but this is a good one to start with. Just push that back. And after Tekken 5, coming out in March 2005, we have Devil May Cry 3 by Capcom. Devil May Cry 2 is apparently terrible, so I didn't bother picking it up, and I just went with number 3. And number 3, I don't know what the deal with number 3 is. Dante's past is now revealed as Devil May Cry returns to its roots. Master Dante's multiple fighting styles while battling never-before-seen demons and new characters as you fight your way towards a brutal confrontation with Dante's mysterious twin brother, Virgil. This is supposed to be, I think, the best Devil May Cry on the system, and maybe the best one until... Well, maybe Devil May Cry 4 was better, but... Anyway. You have another exclusive trilogy for the PS2, and also a very good character action game in Devil May Cry 3. And after Devil May Cry 3, in August, we got Hulk Ultimate Destruction. I wanted this game on GameCube, but, well, it was simply too expensive, so I got it for the PS2. And it's done by Sierra Entertainment, of all things, and this is people's one of the most well-known superhero. How would I put it? One of the most well-known licensed games in terms of quality. You are playing as Hulk in an open world, and you can basically just destroy everything. And there's actually like platforming to it where you can stomp on the ground, and then just because you're so strong, you can kind of just spring up from where you stomped, and you can do a bunch of consecutive jumps like your Mario or something, but with this great brutal physicality in tow. And I haven't played the game, so I don't really know, but there's lots of different ways of destroying things, and this was done, I think, after the after the licensed tie-in movie game, which I think was better than it had any right to be. And I think it's the same team, and they made a better Hulk game after the fact, after that movie came out. And, well, I don't know. It's done by Radical Entertainment, Radical Entertainment. I feel like I know that name. Anywho, really wanted this game. And like Spider-Man 2 and Ultimate Spider-Man, you have a great superhero, game within this generation, which is pretty cool. And after Hulk Ultimate Destruction, I'm just looking around, pardon me. All right, we have Burnout Revenge, which between Burnout 3 Takedown and Burnout Revenge, somewhere in there is purportedly the best Burnout game. Or is that Burnout Paradise the best Burnout game? Either way, with Burnout 3 Takedown, Burnout really took off, and Burnout Revenge is just more of that, with lots of cool modes where you crash into vehicles to take them out, and survival modes where you're not supposed to get crashed into, and just really, really great high-speed arcade racing. And it was on the Xbox and the PS2, but yeah, I got it for the PS2. And I think it was Burnout Revenge was actually for the Xbox 360 as well. So still very much a 6th generation game. So Burnout Revenge coming out in September of 2005. And after Burnout Revenge, still in 2005, we got Sly 3, Honor Among Thieves, which that's a really great piece of box art there. Graphics look really nice on this game. And, well, it's another Sly game. I don't know anything more about it. It may have been the last Sly game, as there was a collection on the PS3, but yeah. Sly games are supposed to be of great quality. And then, after Sly 3, in October of 2005, we got SOCOM 3, which I believe is just more SOCOM with lots of tactics and vehicles and fighting for America. And after SOCOM 3, we got The Warriors, which is a super exciting game to me. It's a 3D beat 'em up game based off the movie, essentially telling the story of the movie, which already had the structure and potential to be a video game. And 20 years after that movie came out or so, they made a video game, them being Rockstar, and it's great, super fun, visceral combat and teamwork-based attack moves. I believe it's cooperative, but you can also just do teamwork with your AI buddies, who are the other warrior members. members like Ajax and wow, can I only remember Ajax? Ajax and Swan and Rat. Is Rat one of them? I don't know. Anywho, it's just the movie, but now in a video game, and it looks really, really rad. So after the Warriors, we get a PS2 Classic coming out in October 2005 with Shadow of the Colossus. And I've played the PS4 version of this game, and I actually thought that the PS4 version of this game is missing something. I feel like there's too much detail in it. And one of the things I really like about watching some of the old footage of this game is how so much of the detail and color is sucked out of the world, but then it's all brought into these moving colossi, and they create a contrast between the undetailed world or the unliving world and themselves, just with how, well, I mean, I don't know, the game's magnificent. It's one of the most magnificent looking games on any system, and I think it's actually most magnificent in its PS2 form, even though I think the graphics, not the graphics, the frame rate is really, really terrible. And I think that the image is quite grainy on the game too. So maybe it's best to play the PS3 remaster / port for the most optimal experience, but certainly like one of the most beloved games ever. And it's not hard to see why. So after Shadow of the Colossus coming out in the same month in October, we got Spartan Total Warrior, which is published by Sega. I believe this game was made by Creative Assembly, the guys who did Age of Empires. You can see their logo right there. This is a game where you are fighting loads and loads of enemies in a hack and slash style, but you're doing it almost top down, and you go from Sparta to Rome to fight, well, I believe the Romans, I guess. And it's like a big, grandiose, large-scale battle. Not too dissimilar from Dynasty Warriors, but not the same as Dynasty Warriors. Anywho, I remember as a kid looking at this box art and being interested in this game. And that was on the GameCube. The logo, the copy I was looking at was for the GameCube. But you can say I'm kind of revisiting an old, or I'm satiating an old desire from when I was a kid by having this game. It's supposed to be quite decent. And after that, in January of 2006, we got Ape Escape 3. Ape Escape 2 was also on the PS2, but I've heard that 3 is the best. This game series is supposed to have a lot of ideas, and a lot of crazy things happen, and it's very creative. And I don't know a thing about it other than that it is, pardon me, a PlayStation or a Sony, just a Sony exclusive. Only for the PlayStation 2. The first one came out on PlayStation 1, and 2 and 3 on PS2, and I have 3. So don't know if there's more I can say about it than that. And after that, in February of 2006, we got Black. This is a game I know nothing about. I believe it was, I don't believe it. It says it right here. It was made by Criterion, who are famous for making Burnout. But they made a shooter, and I don't know anything about this shooter other than people love it, and the graphics are great, and the graphics do look really great. It came out for the Xbox and the PS2. I have it for, obviously I have it for the PS2 and not the Xbox, and I'm excited to play it. It's supposed to be very hard though, but the shooting feels really great, and the sound's really great, and it's one of those beloved 6th-gen first-person shooters, which I feel like there are less of those than I would imagine there to be. Like, obviously there's Halo, and there's Nightfire, 007 Nightfire, and I'm sure there's an obvious one I'm not thinking of, but yeah. Black is supposed to be one of the best 6th-gen shooters there ever was, and it still holds up, I think. Or I've been told that it still holds up. So after Black, in March of 2006, we get Midnight Club 3, which this is not just Midnight Club 3, it's Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition Remix. So is this a 3rd edition or a 2nd edition? I don't know. Also created by Rockstar North. And I think it's really crazy and awesome that Rockstar wasn't just married to 2 franchises in the 6th gen. They could do games other than just Grand Theft Auto and the occasional Red Dead Redemption. I mean, they haven't even made a they haven't even made a Grand Theft Auto game in 10 years. Anywho. That's supposed to be a very good racing game with really great style and lots of cars and great physics. So, after Midnight Club, still in March 2006, we got the Godfather Black Hand Edition. And this is we got the Godfather. I have the Black Hand Edition for the Wii. And I bought it for the Wii because I want to use the IR shooting found in this game. I believe the original shooting is based off of the engine of this game is based off of From Russia with Love and assumedly Everything or Nothing, which sounds pretty exciting, but I like IR shooting, so I went with the Wii edition, but it is still a PlayStation game first, so I have it in this collection rather than with the other Wii games. Haven't played a lick of it, but it's supposed to be quite good. And it's interesting that down here we have a movie from the 80s, up here we have a movie from the 70s, and they are being retold in games from the 2000s, which that's pretty awesome to have franchises or licenses that aren't just part of the zeitgeist being released. I'm not saying this well. It's pretty cool that there are licensed games that aren't just releasing day and date with a movie that's coming out in the here and now, or what was the here and now then, and instead they have retrospective licensed games. And that's not those, pardon me, are not the only retrospective licensed games released. I guess you had From Russia with Love, which was also available on the PS2, but I showed it off in my GameCube collection. And there's another one yet, but we'll get to it. Coming out in March of 2006, busy 2006. Very dissimilar from the GameCube's 2006, certainly. Kingdom Hearts 2. And this cover is almost as good looking as the first Kingdom Hearts cover. The back's really nice too, maybe even nicer. This is a sequel to Kingdom Hearts. I imagine it's the same deal. I don't know if I'll get through the first one because I don't know if this concept appeals to me, but here's the second one. And, well, there we are. So after Kingdom Hearts 2 came out, in, I think it was March, or maybe it was August. I hadn't written it down, unfortunately. I think it was in the summer. We got Pac-Man World Rally, which I talked about in my GameCube collection, but I own it for this system. And it's essentially a Mario Kart game of sorts, or a kart racer. There's more than just Mario Kart in that genre. And I've heard decent things about it. One of the cool things is that you can transform into a Pac-Man cart and eat other carts if you get enough pellets. And, well, I don't know. Interestingly enough, you can see that this is developed by Bandai Namco Games and not Namco. So now these companies have merged. Isn't that lovely? I don't know if this property is strong enough to really grab my interest in the way that Mario Kart does, but still interested to play that one. And after Pac-Man World Rally, in September of 2006, we got Okami. Now, this is also the Wii version of Okami. I think I got it because the idea of drawing with the IR reticle sounded like a really good time, and I think it was much cheaper. This game was made by that fella's name, who I can't think of. It was made, it was published by Capcom, but made by Clover Studios, who was at the time it ran by that very funny fella on Twitter. I can't think of his name. So this game, well, the art style is very much like this. It's very painterly and a very, I don't know what you would call it. Play as the wolf incarnation of the Japanese sun god Amaterasu and channel your divine powers through the mighty celestial paintbrush to restore beauty and order to a bleak world overrun by evil. So yeah, it's kind of a very painterly art style. Yeah, breathtaking traditional Japanese art comes alive in vivid 3D. It's very much a Zelda-style game, which is interesting because this came out just before Twilight Princess, which also was well, a Zelda style game, obviously, being a Zelda game, but also featuring a wolf. So people have said that this is the better Zelda game of those two. I mean, I haven't played it, but we'll see. It's very beautiful for sure. And we're kind of rounding out the list here. Well, we only have a few games left. And the next one, which came out in October of 2006, another Wii game, but another Wii version of it. But we have Scarface, The World Is Yours. Made by Sierra. That's crazy. I thought Sierra only did PC games and that Hobbit game I showed off the other day. So in this game, it kind of says it on the back here. In this game, you get shot in the back like in the movie, but you don't actually die, and then the game picks up from there, and then you reclaim your drug empire. I got this version for the eye or aiming, just like with The Godfather. And just like with The Godfather and The Warriors, it's an older property getting a licensed game, and I think that's super cool. And I think, well, actually, no, I'm pretty sure that isn't true. Al Pacino does not voice Tony Montana in this game, but the actor does a pretty good job, I think. I haven't played it, but it's an open world game where you run a drug economy and shoot things. So, some pretty cool licensed titles coming out in the later or the latter days of the PS2. So, after Scarface, on the last day of October in 2006, we got Final Fantasy 12. And I would say that I'm more interested to play this game than I am to play Final Fantasy 10. I think the graphics look really, really good. A little desaturated, but still a lot of beauty and grandeur within them, and a lot of brightness. Not the most interesting manual. It's a Final Fantasy game. I don't know much about it. I know that the combat's sort of real time, where you're moving around as you fight, rather than a more traditional party system style combat. Anyway, it's interesting to think about the fact that they made that game come out just before the 7th gen consoles were out. And while the PS2 was doing super well and had already sold maybe 120, 130 million units at this point, it would almost be better, I think, for consumers to play Final Fantasy 12 or to have Final Fantasy 12 optimized for the newer consoles, but they opted to put it on the PS2. And I don't think the Xbox, but maybe it was on the Xbox. I think it was just PS2, which was a system that came out in the year 2000. So it was even older than the Xbox and the GameCube, as I've already stated. Anywho, after Final Fantasy 12, and my second last game to show off in physical form, at least chronologically, we have Rogue Galaxy, which is a game that's a quasi sequel to Dark Cloud 2 with similar gameplay, but now you're in space. It's got very beautiful graphics. Not much to show here. And this game was made in, well, it was released in 2007, January 2007. So, unlike the GameCube, the PlayStation 2 was really trucking along right into 2007, even releasing God of War 2 only for the PS2 in 2007. So that's Rogue Galaxy. And after Rogue Galaxy, I don't own it physical, but you got Asterix and Obelix. Released in 2007. I think it released in 2007, which is pretty late. Came out on the GameCube in Europe, but so I have it on both lists, regardless. And then I think Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, which was an arcade game that came out in 1999, got a PS2 release in later on the PS2, sometime in 2007 or 2006. So I've included it here as well, though I don't have it. So the last game to show, chronologically anyway, is Ghost Rider, which was released, I don't know if it was released day and date with Ghost Rider the movie, but I think it was. And it's actually a pretty decent license game, borrowing a lot from God of War, with sequences where you ride down a hellish highway on your motorcycle, shooting other vehicle mounted enemies. The God of War. The God of War parallels are unavoidable, as Ghost Rider also uses chains, similar to Kratos. This was supposed to be a decent game, and it was released very, very late, or sometime in 2007 in the summer. And that is all the games I have to show off for the PS2. In total, for the games I own, I have 69 of them, which is less than my Wii collection and less than my GameCube collection. But that wouldn't be representative of the PS2 library, as the PS2 library had at least 200, or very likely 200 games that were worth playing on it. It released, or to put it right, 1,500 games or something like that, maybe even 2,000. The numbers vary. 1,500 original games, and some more were released for the PS2, and among them, 200 of them, or up to 200 of them, and maybe slightly over, were worth playing, which is about 70 or so more than the GameCube and the Wii. So while I have more games for the GameCube, a lot of the games that I have for the GameCube were PS2 games as well. So just pointing that out. But even so, about 65 physical games with a total of 69 games altogether. I'm realizing that I left out Battlefront 2, which I don't own physically, which is probably why I left it out, but that was a pretty huge game. on the PS2 and on the Xbox. And that was one game that I was always, I wouldn't say I was jealous of. That was a really big notable absence on the GameCube. That and GTA. Not speaking about it like personally, but just in general, in terms of big title games, those two were always the most striking. But either way, the PS2 had a huge library, and so many of them were exclusives. A lot of exclusives. A lot of exclusives by Capcom. You had the Devil May Cry franchise, Onimusha, Maximo, Monster Hunter, I guess, as well, by Capcom. All the first-party exclusives, or second-party exclusives anyway. Ratchet and Clank, Jack and Daxter, Sly Cooper, SOCOM, a lot of stuff, and a lot of exclusives by SquareSoft too. So I'm not really going to talk about it anymore. I just showed off all my games, but I will stack them up, and you can see you can get a visual representation of the PS2 library. So we'll do that. This will be the last you hear from me in this video. So take care, and thank you for watching.